My wife insisted on recording every family moment for the memories, but then I found the AI-generated reminders of what did not exist. I've always been a pretty grounded guy, a firm believer in the laws of physics, the predictability of cause and effect, and the unwavering linearity of time. What has been is done. You can't go back. That was what I told myself every day. I worked with numbers and made sure that they all connected. But those laws had some exceptions. My wife, Sarah, is a brilliant physicist. I always joke that she lived in a different dimension, her mind constantly grappling with concepts that were far beyond my comprehension. Black holes, quantum entanglement, the space-time continuum. She spoke a language that was both fascinating and utterly bewildering. What I do is make sure the projects are done on time, with everything accounted for. What she does is help change the very future. We met in college, drawn together by our shared intellectual curiosity and a mutual appreciation for the absurdities of life. We bonded over late-night debates about string theory, shared dreams of scientific breakthroughs, and a deep, abiding love for bad science fiction movies. We were the perfect match, two nerds finding solace and connection in a world that often felt too chaotic and unpredictable. After graduation, Sarah pursued her PhD, diving deeper into the mysteries of the universe, while I settled into a more stable career, managing construction projects for a local firm. I was happy to support her ambitions, to provide a solid foundation while she chased her dreams. About a year ago, Sarah started working on a new project, something she described as highly theoretical and potentially groundbreaking. She became increasingly secretive, spending long hours in her lab, often disappearing for days at a time. When I asked about her research, she'd offer vague explanations about quantum anomalies and temporal distortions, her eyes sparkling with a mixture of excitement and exhaustion. I didn't pry. I trusted her implicitly, and I knew that her work was often complex and demanding. I tried to be supportive, making sure she had everything she needed, from endless cups of coffee to quiet space to work. Then, about 3 months ago, things started to get weird. It began with small glitches, minor inconsistencies that I initially dismissed as stress-induced hallucinations. I'd walk into a room and find myself déjà vu, as if I'd already lived that moment before. Conversations would repeat themselves, with Sarah and I saying the same lines, using the same inflections, as if we were stuck in a loop. I tried to rationalize it, blaming my own fatigue, my own tendency to overthink things. But the glitches became more frequent and more pronounced, disrupting the fabric of my reality, making me question my sanity. One morning, I woke up to find my car parked in the wrong direction. I distinctly remembered backing it into the driveway the night before, but now it was facing the street, as if someone had turned it around while I was sleeping. I asked Sarah if she had moved it, but she denied it, claiming she hadn't even been outside. I was confused, but I brushed it off as a simple mistake. Maybe I'd just forgotten. Maybe I was losing my mind. Then came the incident with the coffee mug. I had a favorite mug, a chipped and faded ceramic masterpiece that had been with me since college. One morning, I reached for it in the cupboard, only to find it was gone, replaced by a brand new, generic mug that I'd never seen before. I asked Sarah if she had thrown out my old mug, but she looked at me with genuine confusion. "What are you talking about, Mark? You've always used that new mug. I don't even know where your old one is." I searched the entire house, turning every drawer and cupboard upside down, but my old mug was nowhere to be found. It had simply vanished, as if it had never existed. I almost felt like I was going crazy. The feeling of displacement, of unreality, intensified. I'd find objects in different places than I remembered leaving them. The TV remote would disappear, only to reappear in the refrigerator. My keys would vanish from the hook by the door, only to materialize on the kitchen counter. It was as if someone was playing a cruel joke on me, subtly rearranging the pieces of my life, gaslighting me into questioning my own memory. I asked Sarah to stop, but it was too late. The only choice was to keep going. I was not sure what to do with the data. And with that, more began to appear, and what I saw was something I could never take back. The missing mug, the rearranged car, the subtle shifts in my surroundings. These weren't just random occurrences. They were deliberate manipulations, orchestrated by someone who had the power to alter reality, to bend time and space to their will. It was the only explanation that made sense, as crazy as it sounded. The thought would start to make me go crazy for real. And the only person with the knowledge and the motive to pull off something like that was Sarah. I couldn't bring myself to confront her directly. The thought of accusing my wife, the woman I loved, of tampering with reality felt absurd, almost comical. But I couldn't ignore the mounting evidence, the growing sense of unease that had taken root in my mind. I had to investigate, to find out the truth, however disturbing it might be. I started by focusing on Sarah's research. I knew she was working on something related to quantum physics, something about temporal anomalies and distortions in space-time. I figured if anyone could find a way to manipulate reality, it would be her. I began to research her project, poring over scientific papers, online articles, and anything I could find about the theoretical physics concepts she was working with. Most of it went straight over my head, a jumble of complex equations and mind-bending theories that made my brain hurt. But I persevered, driven by a desperate need to understand what was happening to my life. I even contacted Dr. Eleanor Vance. I am friends with her. Gradually, I began to piece together a basic understanding of Sarah's research. She was working on a theory that proposed the existence of localized time loops, small pockets of space-time where the normal laws of physics didn't apply. These loops, if they existed, could potentially allow for the manipulation of time, the ability to repeat events, alter outcomes, and even create alternate realities. That seemed a bit too crazy for me to truly comprehend. The implications were staggering, both exciting and terrifying. If Sarah had actually discovered a way to create these time loops, she would have the power to change everything, to rewrite history, to erase mistakes, to create a perfect world, or potentially, to destroy everything in the process. But it was still just theory, wasn't it? Could she actually be doing it? She had to be. I couldn't help the shiver that went down my spine as I was on that call. It gave me all the things I needed to start putting things into motion. That evening, while Sarah was working late in her lab, or so she claimed, I decided to snoop around her home office. I hated myself for it, for violating her privacy, but I felt like I had no other choice. I needed to see what she was hiding, what she was doing, or was there to be saved. The office was a mess of papers, books, and scientific equipment. Equations scribbled on whiteboards, circuit boards scattered across the desk, and a tangle of wires snaking across the floor. It looked like a mad scientist's lair, a chaotic reflection of the brilliant and turbulent mind that occupied it. I started searching through her files, clicking through folders on her computer, skimming through notebooks, and examining the various gadgets and gizmos that littered her workspace. Most of it was incomprehensible, filled with technical jargon and complex diagrams that I couldn't even begin to understand. But then I found something that caught my eye, a small, hand-drawn sketch of our living room, with annotations marking the precise location of various objects: the couch, the TV, the coffee table, and my favorite mug. Each item was labeled with a series of numbers and symbols, as if they were coordinates on a map. The sketch itself wasn't particularly damning, but the level of detail, the meticulous precision, felt unsettling. It was as if she was cataloging our lives, mapping out our every move, preparing for something or someone. What was I supposed to do? Everything was driving me crazy. Then, among the messy details and numbers, she had written, "Start again." I did not like the way that felt. It felt like things were about to loop again. What did this all entail? Pushing aside the growing feeling of dread, I continued my search, sifting through the chaos, desperate for answers. It was then, tucked away in the back of a drawer, that I found it. A small, worn photograph of Sarah and Ben, her old boyfriend, smiling and carefree, posed in front of a familiar landmark from our town. The image was years old, faded and creased, but it served as a stark reminder of her past, a past that seemed to be creeping into our present. It was getting to be a world of hurt for me, as well as for Sarah. I was about to end my exploration when I was a light behind me. It was Sarah. "What are you doing?" Update 1. Sarah's voice, sharp and laced with fury, shattered the silence. "What are you doing in here, Mark?" "Snooping through my things." "How dare you?" I whirled around, my heart pounding, the photograph clutched tightly in my hand. I, I can explain." I stammered, but the words felt hollow, inadequate, unable to capture the turmoil raging inside me. She advanced, her eyes blazing with a mixture of anger and betrayal. "You don't trust me, do you? You think I'm lying to you? That I'm hiding something?" The questions hung in the air, accusing, demanding, forcing me to confront the truth that I had been desperately trying to avoid. I don't know what to think anymore, Sarah, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Everything's been so weird lately. The glitches, the missing things, the secrets. I just needed to understand what was going on. I held out the photograph, offering it as evidence, as an explanation for my actions. Who is this, Sarah? Why do you have this picture? Why are you always checking up on him, and what are you doing here? She grabbed the photo, her fingers trembling, and stared at it for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then, her face crumpled, and she began to cry. "Oh, Mark," she sobbed, her voice cracking with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted you to find out like this." The tears were unexpected, a crack in the carefully constructed facade she had been maintaining. It wasn't what I would have thought. The change threw me off balance. I had been prepared for anger, denial, even a full-blown confrontation. I wasn't prepared for genuine remorse. "What do you mean? Just tell me. Please, I can't continue like this," I pleaded, trying to take in everything that was happening. She needed to tell me what was going on. It could no longer be in the hands of others. She started from the beginning, but the beginning I had no idea existed. Ben did not want to let her go because, from his view, he could not be with anyone else. He said it was something special, what they had, and it would not work any other way. And if it could not work, there was not much she could do. That was that, and that was all she wrote. But there was no. Then came the clincher. So, that's what has happened. It was a lot to take in. It was going to be hard to understand, to process, and to see. But it was there in the now, and I would need to know. What was I, a simple man, going to do? I have to think this through. All of this, I said. Sarah paused and nodded. It's up to you what to do next. Just please make it fast. I can't live another day without knowing. She looked into the distance, before leaving me alone in there. At this point, I wanted to have all sorts of external counsel. That's when I decided to check one thing to see what there was more to it all than I had thought. It was what my friend had mentioned from before, to check the numbers on her phone. I ran one of my old programs from work, and what it returned was not good. In fact, it was as if they were dating, but she had set a lot of alarms with it to remind her to do things, such as getting ready for work, telling me she loved me, all sorts of weird alarms. It was all a lie. The past and the present, and what could be the future. Was anything what I could do? Probably not. But it was there, and it was all worth it. Final update. The revelations from that night haunted me for weeks. Discovering the alarms on Sarah's phone was like peeling back the final layer of an onion, exposing the raw, painful truth beneath. Our marriage, once a source of comfort and joy, had been reduced to a series of calculated actions, scheduled reminders, and pre-programmed responses. It was a chilling realization that the woman I had loved was not who I thought she was, that our connection had been built on a foundation of lies and manipulation. With that final piece of evidence, I knew there was only one thing left to do. I couldn't salvage the wreckage of our relationship. The trust was gone, the love had withered, and the foundation of our shared life had crumbled beyond repair. It was time to let go, to accept the pain, and to move on. I met with Sarah the next day, handing her a folder containing all the evidence I had gathered, the alarm logs, the photos, the financial records, and the timeline of her deception. I told her I knew about everything, about the affair, about the manipulation, and about the emptiness that had been our relationship. She did not fight back or try to deny what had happened. It had all run its course. The woman and the person that I had been with had ceased to be. "What is there to even say?" was her only response. We proceeded to file for divorce and got it all done so quickly after. It was a relief for everything to be over, even though the stress of all of it had weighed so heavily on my soul. In the months that followed, I went through the motions of rebuilding my life. I focused on my career, throwing myself into my work, finding solace in the predictable logic of numbers and algorithms. I reconnected with old friends, took up new hobbies, and slowly began to rediscover the things that brought me joy and fulfillment outside of my relationship with Sarah. I was going to take some time for myself and figure out how this was to go. It was weird, not having to share my evenings or my bed, but it was something that happened for a reason and was meant to let me do what I wanted to. With the lack of money in the equation, it was difficult to say what was right, but in that case I know what I needed to do. To find the one. It wasn't easy. There were days when the pain of betrayal felt overwhelming, when the loneliness threatened to consume me, and I questioned whether I would ever be able to trust again. But I persevered, driven by a deep-seated belief in my own resilience and a fierce determination to create a future that was defined by honesty, integrity, and self-respect. I learned to forgive, not for Sarah's sake, but for my own. I realized that holding on to anger and resentment would only poison my soul, preventing me from moving on and finding true happiness. It didn't mean what she did was okay, but it was needed to be done. I needed to let go on. And as for Sarah, I haven't seen or spoken to her since that day. I don't know what became of her, what path she chose to follow, or whether she ever found the happiness she was so desperately seeking. I hope, for her sake, that she did. But my focus now is on my own journey, on creating a life that is authentic, meaningful, and filled with genuine connection. And that is what has been my life ever since. I know everything is for the best.